Welcome back to the Common Sense Crypto channel, everyone. This is Rich making another video on XRP today as usual. So wherever you are in this vast planet, I hope you're all having a nice day today. This will be the second half of our discussion regarding XRP. It will be referred to as implementation and tweaks. Ripplenet is an application that performs two essential functions. It takes the place of antiquated systems like Swift and correspondent banking, which are to blame for the continued slowness and inefficiency of cross-border payments. Through on-demand liquidity, it makes use of XRP, a digital asset, to expedite transactions. How XRP is used by Ripplenet to provide on-demand liquidity. Users use digital asset exchanges to fund their accounts. Ripple adds a fixed amount of XRP to the sending institution's XRP wallet. Clients must sign a commit to sell agreement allowing them to store XRP in order for Ripple to pre-fund it. The final game is this: Swift is to be replaced. Ripple has already embarked on that mission. That transformation, in my opinion, is already taking place. Numerous banks are now utilizing Ripple because Swift is just slow and out of date. Ripplenet will be our only option once Swift is gone. The time frame is exactly in line with Executive Order 13772 from 2017. Do you recall that? That was during the previous administration of President Trump. The Faster Payments Task Force now includes Ripple. Ripplenet now has more than 300 partners as of 2019. 2020, the IMF and the Bank of England begin public talks on CBDCs. The entire rollout of ISO 20022 starts in 2022-2025. Blockchain technology was already being figured out by a number of banks and institutions in 2014, but it all came together in 2017. The Fed hoped to introduce the digital dollar as early as 2020, but it was too soon. For this reason, for the last 4 years, everything had to slow down. However, things are already speeding up once more. And as I mentioned before, Ripple has gone out there and installed rail after rail all around the world over the last 4 years. Additionally, rails are still being installed today, and if it's not Ripple itself, it's one of its partners. However, what about digital currencies issued by central banks? Today, October 15, 2024, at Ripple Swell, we are pleased to present our partners for the Ripple USD exchange. After regulatory clearance, RLUSD will be accessible worldwide to organizations and users from Bitstamp, Bitso, Uphold, MoonPay, and other platforms. As an alternative to a digital currency issued by a central bank, they introduced the RLUSD. I even remarked at the time, does anyone think it's ironic that Ripple first brought up RLUSD in June 2024? In the summer of 2024, they also had a meeting with Trump. You still don't believe that all of this was pre-arranged? A private stablecoin is still digital currency, notwithstanding Trump's insistence that there be no CBDC. When you connect the dots, the plan will become clear to you. Back then, I even asked Grok, when was RLUSD first mentioned by Ripple? June 2024, during the previous summer. You know, I believe that they have to change their strategy from using a central bank digital currency, since many nations will find it difficult to get their populace to accept it. Therefore, they needed to think of something else to give. For this reason, RLUSD was established. Notification purchase chip. The product now incorporates Ripple payment systems. This implies that owners of microchips won't have to link their microchips to their bank accounts anymore. I have discussed that on this channel several times. I even declared that I would never obtain the chip. However, I will explain why I do not believe the chip is the mark of the beast. If you think about it, you could remove the chip. If you wanted the chip removed, I'm sure there are doctors out there who would do it as well. After that, you could still purchase everything without getting the mark and have it incorporated into a necklace or whatever. It must be more lasting, in my opinion. This is how it should be, in my opinion. DNA on-chain laboratory. Intake starts in Zimbabwe. With the anchoring of genetic identification data on the XRP ledger, enrollment has formally begun. The decentralized rollout across Africa has begun. Since it is impossible to remove, I will never place my DNA on the XRP ledger. It remains on the blockchain indefinitely when it is added. Your DNA would therefore directly link you to the beast system. If Ripplenet is the new mark of the beast system, it couldn't be taken away. I believe that when they first considered the chip implant, many people connected it to Bible reading. The hand or the forehead will be the location, but it's possible that the forehead wasn't quite what they had in mind when they read the Bible. Perhaps it was more about looking with your eyes. You know, that's also starting to gain popularity. This aims to monitor international bank transactions for money laundering using artificial intelligence. They will tell you that you must have a digital ID for this reason, as they will be keeping an eye on everything anyhow, but they always bring up the issues of money laundering and getting to know your customers. People will soon have to demonstrate that they are human due to the development of AI. AI's ascent is also not that distant. People continue to believe that it will happen in 10 years, but it will happen far sooner. Furthermore, only in a cashless economy can Agenda 2030 be implemented. We have no idea who is utilizing a $100 bill in cash today. The central bank will have complete control and the technology to enforce that, which is a significant distinction with central bank digital currency. The best did that. Promoting digital IDs, digital currency, and other central bank products was always the best. The person who developed all of this technologies around Ripplenet is also the best. They are the ones that wrote the white paper outlining their strategy for implementing this new Ripplenet-based system. A cashless society is the only way to implement Agenda 2030's dystopian worldwide digital surveillance for a social credit system. The World Economic Forum also mentioned the advantages of a cashless society. European Central Bank, or ECB. What does Christine Lagarde consistently advocate for? A society without cash. That's their ultimate goal. Because you can choose not to use this method as long as there is money. It would be impossible for them to follow your transactions if you went shopping with cash. However, all of them are moving in this way. That will be the beginning of the end for the US dollar in paper form, even with the advent of the digital currency. They are currently testing this out in other locations, so you could potentially see it. Although convenience is the allure, in a cashless economy, your biometric digital ID will serve as your carbon wallet, linked to CBDC, to function as a social credit system. That world coin too. They were scanning the retinas of people as they went about. Do you recall that? And once more, the blockchain is tracking all of that. And they always say it so you can, that since you would have to be the one standing there looking for the system to approve the transaction, there would be no possibility of someone stealing your money. I mentioned that it might not be in the forehead for this reason. Perhaps your retinas are always affected. We're not entirely sure. Visa cards and mouthpiece media are promoting a cashless society. The battle for riches gets more intense. Visa gives eateries $10,000 to switch to cashless transactions. Do you recall that in 2023 when Starbucks was pushing for cashless transactions as well? And I believe that's because everyone desires this. This is the exact motivation they seek. UBI is on the horizon. Under the golden cage, they refer to it as universal high income, on the surface plenty. Let's decipher. People are beginning to realize this. Everyone else is supporting this. This is what they want to occur. However, dependence on the government is the trap, plus the golden cage, soft walls, velvet bars, spending restrictions, programmable credits, and health, housing, and food that are all dependent on compliance. Every time they advertise a huge salary, it sounds fantastic, but we won't actually receive it. The government will provide you with universal basic income. Additionally, it will depend on your educational background. It will be determined by the work you completed prior to AI taking over your position. Therefore, I believe that those who are supporting this and believing it is a good idea are overlooking the much larger picture. Furthermore, as I have stated, I do not believe it will take the shape of a chip. In my opinion, the blockchain will be more like your DNA, allowing the system to determine whether or not you are a part of it. Therefore, if you were to complete a transaction, it would probably already be aware of it due to a retinal scam. Though I don't think it will be in chip form, I do think it will be something that people must sign up for. In other words, until you put your DNA on the blockchain, you won't be able to purchase food, this or that. Since it must be a decision, the individual must choose whether or not to do this. I'm suggesting that it can't be anything that you could be duped into. By the way, this is just my theory. I just wanted to show you what we currently know and where I believe this is headed. Once more though, I will conclude this film. Thank you for watching, everyone. Thank to everybody. In the next one, I'll see you. Enjoy your evening.